Hi, and welcome to the 50th episode of the South Texas Power Lunch. I'm Matt Duke, the managing attorney from the South Texas Business Lawyers, and we are so thrilled to have you here today as we talk to Jaime Wesolowski, the president and CEO of Methodist Healthcare Ministries. Now, Jaime is a dear friend. He is a mentor, and I actually had the honor of working for him at Methodist Healthcare System years ago as a young lawyer and young businessman. And there was a couple of things, actually more than a couple, but two of the biggest things that Jaime taught me was his leadership style around how to build a culture that drives towards whatever your mission is, a mission-driven organization. And the second thing was, how do you drive an organization to be innovative? And in this sit down, we got to talk about those two very things. And I'm just so excited that you get to hear straight from Jaime about his leadership and how he's grown Methodist Healthcare System and continues to lead Methodist Healthcare Ministries around a strong culture that is serving humanity to honor God in South Texas, and also about some of the things we got to do at Methodist Healthcare System. Thank you so much for your support for these 50 episodes. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode as much as I had in putting it together. Jaime, thanks so much for coming on this show. I can't tell you how much I just appreciate you and your friendship and the fact that for our 50th episode, you would join us here to talk about all the great things going on.
Well, it's amazing you would ask me to do that, but thank you very much.
Well, for the 100th one, we'll come back to. We'll just pace it out for a little bit, and there'll be even more amazing things to talk about. So in this episode, I really wanted to talk about mission, vision, values for an organization, which, I mean, you're a dear mentor of mine, and it's something that you at Methodist Healthcare System and here at Methodist Healthcare Ministries led. And it's a story that's not talked enough in this community. And then I want to get to the innovation that's going on here at Ministries as well. But let's go back to and start for mission, vision, values. This is something that you as a leader, I just always experienced. It was something that you just naturally led by example, which was making sure the organization knew and lived by the mission, vision, values. Can you explain a little bit, like just how you do that as a leader to embed that in through your leadership?
Yeah, well, it's just, it's absolutely key. And I think it's key for every leader in every organization. And, you know, some do it really well and some sort of miss it and skip it, which is a big mistake. So for us, which is very similar to what we did at Methodist Healthcare System, but here, you know, we everything we do comes through our mission, vision, and values, and so we talk about it a lot. We have goal alignment boards where we put our mission, vision, and values up there. Our core values are something that are on our name tags. We are, as part of our evaluation process, so when we evaluate every team member, mission, vision, and values are part of that. And one thing we do that is going to be a cycle of improvement for us with this new evaluation year is we had a team that worked on this, and it's our core values. And so we came up with 4 to 6 behaviors that are key to every one of our 5 core values. And so then we put a description of a sort of a 1 through 5 rating for each one of those behaviors, because our rating in our evaluation of core values got to be a little bit vague and loose, and we wanted to put a little more specifics in them and give people things to strive for, getting a 5, getting the best in each one of those behaviors. And so, you know, our mission statement is serving humanity to honor God. I think that speaks, I can tell you that speaks personally to me and really speaks to every person here at Methodist Healthcare Ministries, and it certainly did at Methodist Healthcare System. I think that, you know, our core values are I am the caring servant. And so it's I, integrity, M, you know, making a difference, T for teamwork, C for compassion, and S for spirituality, which I would say is truly a key core value for us at Methodist Healthcare Ministries.
You know, I mean, One of the things, and I mentioned this in the intro, is the being under your leadership at Methodist Healthcare System. And one thing that has always impressed me about your leadership is the depth of your love for the mission of the organization at Methodist Healthcare System, here for Methodist Healthcare Ministries, and the depth of which you are. I mean, what you just talked about, you drill down from the mission statement to core values to what are the behaviors, so that way people can judge themselves to say, are we meeting those core values? It's something that most leaders say they want their culture to be a certain way, but don't take the time for the depth. What have you seen be the difference maker in having that depth of your culture?
Yeah, you just can't hang it on the wall and come up with some flowery words and hang it on the wall and never talk about it. So we, in addition to the things I just mentioned, we have our connection points with every one of our team members on a quarterly basis.
And how many people is that?
500 team members. And for every connection point, we stand up and we recite our mission and our vision. That's something that's very, very important. Like I said, we post it everywhere, and we do the same thing for leadership excellence. Leadership excellence is something we do about quarterly also for all of our leaders, and we do the same thing. We stand up and recite our mission and our vision and talk about our values, and it's just something that we have to live. I think that if you do that, it helps you drive engagement and belonging of every team member throughout the organization. And if you do that, and you've heard me say this so many times, but if you do that, you get people bought in and pulling in the same direction. Yeah. And you don't want too many people letting go of the rope or pushing the rope in the wrong direction. And if you get that engagement, that belonging, and you get them included in the decisions that are made, understanding the decisions that are made, it just makes everything you do, everything we do to care for the least served so much better.
So part of this, I got to share a little bit of stories about, because I don't get to talk about them, and these need to be spoken about. I will never forget you said leadership excellence. We had a leader meeting at Methodist Healthcare System, and you asked everybody that knew the mission statement at that time to raise their hand. And how many leaders we had like 600-700 people in the room, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right, 600-700 people. When your CEO says, "Do you know your mission statement?" everybody raises their hand. And then I'll never forget, you stepped off stage with the microphone to have somebody recite it, and then all of a sudden, 3/4 of the hands went down?
Most of the hands went down, yeah. Most of the hands went down.
And your message that day changed me dramatically, because you weren't, you didn't chastise anybody about it.
Well, I actually didn't really give anybody the mic either.
Didn't.
It was a ploy to say, who really thinks they know the message?
But it worked. And you took that as a moment to make everybody actually have to face their truth of whether they really were attached to the mission or not. Yeah. They just gave superficial, it was on the wall, it was on the cards that we did that day, right? Or did they really know it? And it was a major turning point, because it caused every single person had to evaluate, had to actually address the fact they put their hand down.
Yeah, exactly.
For it. So it just goes to those, with everything you've said there, right? If the captain of the ship is 100% invested, the rest will know.
That's right.
More of that.
That's right.
How do you do that daily here in such a large organization that's spread across, is it 74 counties?
74 counties, yep. Uh-huh.
How do you connect that culture across 74 counties? It was hard enough doing it here at Methodist Healthcare System with 10,000 employees, right? But now you've got people spread all over.
Yeah, now they have 13,000, so
right.
It's even grown since I've left. Well, we started, you have to be intentional about these things, and we started with a culture map.
Okay.
And this was we started in late 2020, and by the time we had it done, it was 2021. But what we talked about was, where do we think our culture is right now? And I'll never forget this. It started off with our fall retreat for our CEO council. So I have about 13 people that are on my council. And so we had to give it enough time to get this thing started. So where do we think our culture really is right now? Let's be honest. and man, were we honest. And it wasn't good, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel like, so we said, here's our current state culture. And it was things like competitive, siloed, lack of trust.
Oh, wow.
That's within my team. So you can imagine if my team can't even get that right.
Wow.
But so they were speaking for our team, but they were also speaking for MHM as a whole. So then we went to future state. Where do we want our culture to be someday? Now we're not going to say if it's going to take 2 years or 20 years to get there. What do we want our future state culture to be? So we put those things up there, and then we identified how we're going to get there. We call those accelerators. What are the accelerators? Things that we're going to have to do over time to get to that future state. And then we talked about decelerators, things that are going to get in the way.
Right.
And so we put a team together. You know how I work. We put a team together for every accelerator, every decelerator, and came up with action plans to address every one of them. And so that's really kind of how we started and driving this culture. And I will tell you that I'm so proud that the last 2 employee or team member engagement surveys, we scored well into the top decile when we benchmark our engagement. Last time we fell this short of 95th percentile because they do it by 5% increments. So very proud to get from a point that wasn't bad. We were a little bit above 50th percentile, so it wasn't like we came from a terrible culture or terrible engagement. But we came a long way. And then we also do a culture survey, which is a little different than team member engagement survey. And we scored very, very well in our last culture survey too. So that's kind of how we went about plugging it in, addressing it, and then making sure that we got our ear to the ground day by day by day. It's a lot of rounding.
Okay.
We do rounding different ways.
Which rounding in the hospital context, for those that are watching us here, is going around literally like they would around the hospital floors to check on patients, to check in with team members.
Yep.
And while Methodist Healthcare Ministries does provide just a massive amount of medical services in the community, there's a lot more that's done, but you've brought that as a discipline to ministries, correct?
Yep, that's right. So everybody rounds the same way except me. I'll tell you why everybody else rounds. So we kind of go through themes based on what we're getting back in our rounding or our team member engagement surveys and things like that, to just ask certain types of questions to get more feedback, to get more input from them on what they think we should do to address those things. And we go through those themes, and we kind of put those together and learn from them. My rounding is different because our team members sort of dictated a different type of rounding for me.
Okay.
And this all kind of happened by accident, because when I would go out and round in the regions, I would generally pull everybody together and just sit down, either have lunch, have coffee, whatever, and open it up and let them talk and give me ideas, give me suggestions, give me complaints, etc. And we just started talking. But when I did it here locally, I would go round department by department at our clinics and things like that. And they all said, we want you to round here in San Antonio like you round when you go to the regions. So we started calling it Java with Jamie.
Oh, okay.
So now it's typically in the morning. I go around, everybody's free to come or not come. Our leaders try to give people time off to come. I do it over an hour and a half or 2 hours sometimes, so they can come at different times. And it's just everything's fair game. They can come and just bring anything they want to talk about. And I always have a scribe. And then we put that input into a stoplight report, which we change out every 2 months. And so every idea comes, we put it on there. And if it's green, it means that we're doing it. Great idea. Thank you so much. If it's yellow, we're still tinkering on it and thinking about it. And if it's red, we're not going to do it or we can't do it. And this is the reason why. The why on the red is very important.
Right.
Because if we just say, we're not going to do this, guess what? they lose their faith in leadership.
Or they never hear about it, right?
Or they never hear about it.
I went to Java with Jamie, and I had all these 3 things, and that's great. I have no idea what happened to that feedback loop.
Yep.
Is critical. So I smile here because I think there's another thing we need to talk about too, which is the Malcolm Baldrige process. Because as people are listening to this, it's a lot. I mean, as I listen to it now, I'm checking all the boxes: 2-way communication, cycle of improvement. I mean, you led that at Methodist Healthcare System, so it's in my mind. But to most people, they don't know about Malcolm Baldrige at all. Out of curiosity, because I've never asked you this question, why did you decide that the Malcolm Baldrige principles were something that you were going to use as your leadership guide?
Well, I became interested in it before I even came to San Antonio. So probably back in 2005, 2006, I went to a couple sessions about Baldrige, and I really said, I kind of knew my time was I wasn't going to be at my last hospital out in California for forever. So I was like, I don't know if I want to start something that I'm not going to be there for. But when I got here, of course, we did some other things first. But then a couple years into it was really the time to look at Baldrige as a way to develop better processes, better ways of thinking. Methodist Healthcare System is a great system. We were doing great things. I wouldn't say it was overly process-oriented when we first came. We really thought things through to that extent.
Had great people.
Great people.
Yep.
And the same held true at Methodist Healthcare Ministries, too. They were not process type of thinkers. We are now.
Very much so from everything I'm hearing.
And I think our team members would all tell you that. But so it was really getting more people involved, so you're not making decisions at the CEO council or at the system leadership level, but you're including people that are closest to the work, getting them involved on teams, making sure you have a diverse set of inputs on those teams, and anybody that's affected ought to be on that team. That addresses that silo culture issue that we had at the beginning at MHM. So that's really why I thought it was a great way to get started. And I knew I had a lot of runway at the beginning of Methodist Healthcare System, so I would be able to start it, keep it going, and really change the culture and change our performance by using Malcolm Baldrige.
Well, and I need to make sure, congratulations to Methodist Healthcare Ministries in the 2024 Governor's Award.
Thank you.
For what is the Texas Quality, which is Malcolm Baldrige process. So for those that may be saying, what's this Baldrige? So Malcolm Baldrige was a person that was very process-oriented leader. From that, using his namesake, they developed basically a holistic way that you look at an organization. ISO, some people hear about ISO 9000, that was just process-based, but this was holistic from how do you leadership, to how are you engaged with your customers, to how are you engaged with your own workforce, to how are you dealing with process, innovation, and again, it kind of goes beyond that. And it's through a series of questions that you answer that actually helps you assess yourself.
That's right.
And the depth of those answers go through an iterative process, because a big part of that is process improvement. So what I love hearing it, because I mean, being on this journey, beforehand for you with you for years, I mean, you're now getting to the depths of those questions that we talked about, and that was on our journey to get to, and Methodist has continued on that to do that. But that's really what this is. It's a self journey of using these principles that are questions of how do you improve your culture. Well, if you answer is I don't know, well, there you go. There's something that you need to work through, or how do you listen to your employees and get feedback from them and have two-way communication? Well, I don't know. Well, you've already heard Jamie here talk about what they're doing here at Methodist Healthcare Ministries, and it's a fascinating framework to use, and I'm a disciple of it because of your leadership and what I experienced with.
I've noticed that your questions are all how, right?
Yep.
So for the Malcolm Baldrige guide, all the questions are how. It's not prescriptive. They don't tell you how to do anything.
That's right.
They ask you the tough questions, and then you sit there and go, well, I don't really have a process. We haven't even done that.
That's right.
A lot of times. Or, yeah, we work on that, but we're not so good at it.
That's right.
So it forces you to look internally, and if you really want to improve, then you start working on the how, and you get better. And Malcolm Baldrige was the Secretary of Commerce
Right.
For President Ronald Reagan at the time. The one thing that's really nice about the Baldrige process is that it's very apolitical. So just so it happened under a Republican time with Ronald Reagan, it has worked extremely well with all presidents. Once upon a time, the President of the United States used to come and give the award. That kind of wore off a little bit, but they're trying to get that back.
Well, that'd be great.
So that would be nice. But anyway, it came up during a time when the Japanese were having more success in business than the American companies, and things needed to change. And so he put together a whole process guide for us through his Malcolm Baldrige.
Well, and one of the key principles there, right, is continuous improvement. And what's fascinating to me, and I've been out of it for a couple of years now, but you were sharing with me, a couple months ago, it continues to evolve and to improve as well. In itself, the framework to adapt to the realities of COVID, and more emphasis on innovation, which again, it's a living, breathing framework, just like every organization, is dealing with all of those.
And they just changed all the criteria
right.
just this year, just for 2024. So it's all new. Everything's a little different. It's not drastically different, but I would say it's a 20% of the criteria improvement.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the biggest things that I saw under your leadership at Methodist was alignment. Because again, when you start to answer questions and become process-oriented rather than people-oriented with a high culture, it starts to get the boats. You even mentioned it, everybody on the rope. You don't want somebody pulling this direction if everybody wants to go. How do you drive alignment here at Methodist Healthcare Ministries to what you guys are doing, which is so powerful, back to that mission?
Yeah, there's a technique, and you're going to laugh at it when I say it, but there's a technique called ADLI. And so that is align, deploy, learning, and then integrate. And so align is what you do first.
Right.
It's what you do first. And so we actually go through some of the same processes at MHM that we did at MHS, and that is, goal alignment boards, put a couple goals that are personal on our individual badges.
We'll talk a little bit more about that, because you and I know that one.
Okay,
but
yeah.
Again, this is where I want people to understand all of the depth of your leadership, because we did goal alignment boards at Methodist, but tell everybody a little bit more about what they do here.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, we develop our goals, which are all very objective, measurable, SMART goals, and we do mine and the organizational goals with the board to begin with. So they are approved by the board, and then we cascade them down. So after my goals are done, the organizational goals are done, then my vice presidents, and then directors, and then managers and supervisors can all do their goals, which are aligned with the overall organizational goals. So no department can have a goal that doesn't align with the overall organizational goal. That's just not allowed. So you start with the organizational goals,
right.
Amy's goals, and then everything has to support it. So that's how we do it, and then we put those in on goal alignment boards. So one thing we've done, a couple things that we've done a little differently here than we did at MHS, is that in addition to having organizational boards and department boards, we have individual leader boards too. So I have my own board for just my goals.
Oh, wow.
And my goals are just a subset of the organizational goals. So
right.
We might have, let's say we have 10 organizational goals. I might have 4 of those that the board wants me to focus on.
Right.
Doesn't mean I can just let go of the other 6, but those are the 4 I'm going to be evaluated on. Those are the 4 I really have to drive. So we've done that. The other thing we've done differently, which I think is very, very innovative, is that at Methodist Healthcare System, I could just go around in every hospital. I could go up to the goal alignment board and bring the employees and talk about the goals and where they are, and are they improving, and are they making their goals and things like that. I can't do that at Methodist Healthcare Ministries. We are so spread out.
Oh, right.
74 counties. It's about a third of the state of Texas. We are all over the place. I can't get, and a lot of the employees are by themselves in an office in a United Methodist Church someplace.
Right.
So I can't get to every one of them personally. So what we did is we created virtual goal alignment boards. So what we have now, which the examiners loved on the site visit, by the way. So right now, any team member can go into that and see the goal alignment board of anybody.
Oh, wow.
Within the system and where they are based on this month.
Right.
You know, are they making it? Are they not making it? Why? What's the action plan? So you can learn. You could sit on that for days, just looking into all the different departments and leaders and how are we doing as an organization. You can do it virtually.
Right.
So we do have boards that are physical boards, and you'll see them all over this building and every building that we're in. But then we also have the virtual goal alignment boards.
Wow. I'll never forget when we were at Methodist. And so these goal alignment boards were the departments, every single one of their goals, and they related to a pillar, which, again, we drove upon. So, again, this alignment that most people, they don't take that attention to say, they think this is extra work.
Right.
But they don't realize is they're actually having so much waste by not getting everybody aligned that once you start doing something like this, you almost are like, why would we do it any other way? Because it gets the alignment. But I'll never forget having all those hospital boards with all of their major pillars that we were manually updating down the hall. But it was striking because you could see excellence, you could see needing improvement, you could see improvement across, and it was truth. Yeah. Because it was data driven.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes we didn't like it. But it was the truth.
And every time there was a red in there, which meant we weren't making our goal, there had to be an action plan.
And you had to stare at it.
I
mean, you had to walk by that board and see red. And for people that were very, like I'm very high driven, like I want to accomplish, the fact that you would see that red on there. I mean, CEOs, I remember of hospitals, like, we're going to get that red moved.
Yep.
And their greens could be, 99th percentile, but that one red, it kept them up at night. But
right.
If you don't see it, if you don't measure it, if you're not held accountable to it, you don't actually drive to those things, which, again, from your leadership, it's...
You remember it well.
I do.
Well, I have to tell you that without your work, we would have never got to the point where we were at Methodist Healthcare System. I mean, we were definitely partners. You were driving it. You and I would have a lot of big... 30,000 foot discussions, and then you go get it done and put the structure in. So I thank you immensely for our success at Methodist Healthcare System. Thank
you. It was your leadership, and I loved every minute of it. Let me ask you one more question. This comes actually from Baldrige. I went and looked, but it's something that in our community, and especially the geographic, is around a culture of diversity and equity and inclusion that for everybody, there's two pieces to that. There's diversity of thought, then there's diversity of cultures, which the breadth of ministry, 74 counties, you have that just by those that you serve. How do you drive that into your organization to make sure that you have that matches who you're serving?
Okay. I'll go back a step,
okay.
and then I'll come back to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So once we started on this journey and we knew that we wanted to go into Baldrige, I needed a vehicle, just like you were kind of my vehicle at MHS. I needed a vehicle. So we really thought about it long and hard, and what does that need to be? So we came up with a whole new department that didn't exist.
Okay.
I convinced Juan Moroni-Omatad, who was our vice president of clinical services.
She's amazing.
To do something way different. And I think just like you were the person at MHS, I needed someone at MHM that could think that way. Didn't have to be an expert at Baldrige, and she wasn't. She knew about Baldrige, but none of us were really experts.
I was going to say I didn't know about Baldrige when we first got started.
Yeah, she was kind of the same place you were, but you're bright, you're well respected, you're pathfinders, you get things done, and that's the way she is too. And so I chose her as my person to be the point person. And it took about 3 conversations with her. At first, she thought I was nuts. You want me to do what? Be the vice president of this new department that doesn't exist? And so we called it organizational excellence. It's thriving now. But we decided there were 4 things that need to be part of it. So it's not just Baldrige. The first one is Baldrige, performance excellence, improve our processes. The next one was DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The third one is organizational learning.
Okay.
Because we had a lot of learning to do, especially with leaders.
Sure.
And management education, and then learning for all of our team members. And then the fourth is evaluation, impact, and learning. And the reason we call it that is because, as you can probably imagine, most not-for-profit organizations don't measure that well.
That's right.
They don't measure like, say, a for-profit organization
Right.
who is living and dying.
They measure
dollar
off
for dollar.
of, dollars coming in, dollars going out, but not to the level of a for-profit. For sure.
So we had to evaluate. We had to measure, evaluate, decide on if those things we're doing is really having the impact we want, and then learning from that and adjusting. Goes back to Adley, right?
There you go.
And so let me go back then to DEIB. So with DEIB, what we did was we spent an entire year almost of just education for us.
Okay.
And the reason why that was important is because when you go through history and you see the root causes of much of the health inequities that surround us, it's pretty eye-opening. And we all had to learn that and really understand and come to grips with that and understand the root causes of some of the health inequities before we go do something about it. So we did that, and then we developed a program with an outside consultant. The program is called Essence of Respect. If you call it the diversity program, guess what? Some people like automatically go, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you call it respect, well, we should have respect for everybody.
Right. That's great.
So this was a great program. Everybody went through the courses. Everybody had to pass a test. So not everybody passed the test the first time, but everybody passed the test pretty quickly. And so we had 100% passing on this test. And it really, and not only is it important because of the work we do in equity, but it's important to the work that we do that I fully believe in as far as a leader. And as you know, I believe the best leadership is leadership that includes everybody.
That is your fundamental core.
Yeah.
Always has been.
So it's inclusion, right?
Yeah.
It's
You
inclusion.
included everybody and wanted to build consensus. And I will tell you, and I'll admit this on here, there are many times where I'm like, I don't think he should, every single time. And it was always right. Always right. People will try to say, well, not this time, but no, Jaime is all the time.
Well, I really believe that decisions that are made as a team are always going to trump a decision that's made by any individual. And, I don't care how much of a genius some leader thinks he or she is. If you get the team of the people closest to the work and make it a diverse team where it's a variety of different people from different backgrounds, different departments working on it, they'll come up with a better decision virtually every time. So it's really inclusion. And then what comes from that? If you do all that and you're including everybody, you're getting a diverse set of people serving on teams, and then you make decisions, and they're good decisions, eventually there's belonging. People start saying, man, it's amazing that I was part of that decision. Let me tell you about it. And they're telling all their coworkers, and they're included. Their engagement goes up, and they feel like they really belong to Methodist Healthcare Ministries. And that's what's happening right now.
I mean, from a culture standpoint, which is so rich, and then the fact that their daily work can be tied to belonging, I mean, that's why I would assume your culture, again, is in the top decile, moving into, the top, part of that. What drives, let me change that question. Let me ask you about the innovation part, because I could talk to you for hours. But let me shift
we will.
over.
I don't know.
We might. Well, I know you got lots to do today.
I have time. Always have time for you.
Thank you. So let's talk about innovation. The culture, the diversity, that makes complete sense to me. But let me shift over to the innovation part. I would assume it's a byproduct of everything you just talked about. But how do you drive a culture of innovation here at Methodist Healthcare Ministries?
Well, first of all, you got to let everybody know it's okay. Innovation is okay. Innovation is good. We want to thrive on innovation, so people should be thinking creatively. And you've heard me say this, and we've talked about this in our past life, but there's only two ways to get better, right? You improve your processes, which we've already talked about,
right? Or
you innovate, and you come up with a better way to do it. And so we talk about innovation a lot. We encourage. We've had a whole course on pathfinding, being a pathfinder, with our leadership team, and part of that is finding a way, whatever that is. And innovation is good. So we don't have a culture that gets on people if they try something and they make a mistake. Having a risk is good. We believe in failing forward, so it's okay to try something, as long as you're not doing something that's unethical or something crazy like that. But we like innovation and thinking. So, and now I will tell you about a process, a cycle of improvement that we're just in the very early part of. And it is something that we went to the Quest conference, which is the national annual conference for Malcolm Baldrige Award. And we went there, and one of the beautiful things about that is you get to see organizations that are at the top of their game on different things.
And they're telling you how they do it.
They're telling you how you do it.
Right, they share it.
And then you learn it. And then one thing that's encouraged within Baldrige is to share.
Right.
So
we benefited a lot from that sharing, and
did.
I think many people benefited from us from that sharing as well.
We did. So we found this organization, and I don't think they'll mind if I name who it is, and but it was a charter school of San Diego. Okay, so you don't learn just from people within your own industry. You learn from everybody that does all the categories of Baldrige. And they described a process of innovation that I had never seen before, quite this to this extent. And it all starts with the ADLI.
Okay.
It's the ADLI on innovation, and then they pick different parts of innovation, and they do an ADLI for each one.
Okay.
And they include their people throughout the organization. It's an amazing process. So we have a site visit planned.
Okay.
We're sending a few people to San Diego. I know it's a tough gig. I'm not going. I am not going to that one. But few people have to go to San Diego during this hot summer that we have and learn from the charter school of San Diego on how they do innovation. And we're going to bring that back. So it's going to be a cycle of improvement later on this year for us to get more granular, more specific on exactly how we drive innovation. We have a lot of innovative things here. I mean, things that nobody's ever done. But it's not as granular of a process as it could be. I would assume right now it's good, results, people driven, certain pockets. But again, Baldrige says, well, what is your process for innovation? Mm-hmm. And people, when they hear that, I'm sure right now going, what are you talking about? A process of innovation? Yeah. Innovation just happens. Exactly.
It's what you do, but not really. If you can put structure around it, you can actually harness that for your organization.
Well, this is the best one I've ever seen. I can't wait to bring it home, bring it to Methodist Healthcare Ministries. And with the type of work we do, we're just we're laden for innovation. We have all kinds of things we can do.
Right.
But once we have this process that really stimulates our thinking more, I think our innovation is just going to go off the chart.
Well, and I was going to bring that up too. So from a health equity standpoint, health equity is many times so well rooted within the communities that don't have health equity. And so, there is no process. There is just, it's been this way forever, so it is what it is type of situations. In order to really affect health equity, it's almost innovation that is the solver of health equity issues that's mm-hmm. there. How do y'all tie that together here at Ministries?
Yeah, well, we, I guess I have to go back to, Robert Wood Johnson, who has defined, they did a study and they've defined all the different inputs to good health. And they talk about what percentage each of these types of inputs have to good health. And so when you go to the things that I did for decades, being a hospital CEO or a hospital system CEO, Robert Wood Johnson says that only 20%, if improved, only 20% of good health is driven by health care.
Right, which people, because of that health word before equity,
Yeah.
they believe it's just, we just got to get better, access to doctors.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of that is good primary care.
Sure.
And that's very, very important. But a lot of it is when you get outside of primary care, it's really dealing with an individual who is sick.
Right.
And you're making them well. So that's not exactly health.
Right.
It's not good health and well-being.
Right.
And quality of life and things like that. So when you go to the other 80%, there are, those are all basically social determinants of health. And even access to health care is a social determinant of health or medical, anyway, so the other 80% are a lot of different things like just your habits, smoking, how's your diet? Are you obese? Do you drink too much? Do you take drugs? All the things that people do to themselves that aren't good for health. And then there are a lot of other things like, are you in a place where you can get fruits and vegetables? Are you in a food desert?
Right.
Is there food insecurity where you are? Do you have clean water? There are things like education. Do you have access to a good education? Employment, transportation, housing. The list goes on and on and on. And social support is one. And a new one that people finally are looking into is digital equity. Are you connected digitally?
Which, everything is digital now.
Yeah, and if you're not,
I don't have any paper.
If you're not, you can't. You can't compete these days. So we're working on that too. But anyway, so to get back to your question, so health equity is us really looking at all those social determinants of health and seeing which ones we can work on, because, and much of it's place-based. In general, if you live in an urban area, your chance for life expectancy goes up. You have better services but not necessarily.
Right.
Because there are pockets within San Antonio. There are pockets within every major city where the life expectancy is almost 20 years less in one zip code as it is in another zip code in the same city.
And some places, I know it's been a while since I looked at that data, but there were zip codes surrounded by other zip codes that was the case.
Exactly.
And you would say, well, no way, because we know that area, it's an affluent area, but tucked in the middle of it were these pockets.
Exactly. And so that's what we call our priority zip codes. We do it by zip codes pretty much. It's just easier for us.
Sure.
But we go zip code by zip code throughout San Antonio, and those are our priority zip codes. Those zip codes with low life expectancy, higher poverty, et cetera. And that's where we work. And then when you go outside of San Antonio, you go into rural areas that really lack in service, and their life expectancy is lower because they really don't have access to much.
Right.
They are in food deserts.
Right.
We work in colonias, which is areas that are non-integrated and really struggle with the basic services: running water, street lights, paved streets, trash pickup. Some of these colonias have none of that.
Which here, most people, especially in urban areas, they don't believe that exists. They think that that's what happens in third world countries.
Yeah.
But it is in our communities.
That's who we take care of. And I didn't realize it was to that extent until I first got to MHM. And of course, I wanted to go everywhere. And so I wanted to go to see the colonias. I've never been in the colonia before. And there are different levels of colonia. There are some colonias that are not too bad.
Yeah.
There are some that are just awful. I mean, all the things I just mentioned that some lack, there are some that lack all of those.
Wow.
So they have to go somewhere and go to a water pumping station to bring water so they can flush their toilets, clean their clothes, wash their dishes safely,
right?
Things like that. no garbage pickup. So we're just used to like throwing it in a
Right.
container.
And if it's late, you're like, man, I missed my garbage. Yeah, I got to keep garbage in my house for two.
So imagine if you don't have that.
Right.
Some of these people don't have transportation.
Right.
Or the majority of them have maybe one vehicle,
Okay.
and then somebody is going to work, and the rest of the family has no vehicle.
Right.
So again, things that we don't typically think about.
Sure.
So that's health equity, is focusing on social determinants of health for the least served.
How does innovation play into solving those problems?
Yeah, we again, encouraging ourselves first of all to think innovatively. We come up with some some things that we've done that are, one very innovative thing is something we call, it's our communities of solutions effort. We call it Prosperemos Juntos, Thriving Together. It was a poor attempt by me, but
Hey, it was better than I was going to be able to do.
So what that is a program we put together with some help from Dr. Shoma Saha, and she kind of gave us the concept and we kind of made it our own. But what it is we go into communities and we put together coalitions, which are just different organizations. It could be anybody. It could be a federally qualified health center, a church, a school, a not-for-profit. It could be anything, any coalition of people in a community that would like to better their community. So we take 6 months to educate them on social determinants of health.
Okay.
And then once they understand all of them, they pick the one where they think they have the biggest gap in their community. So we can't possibly...
So you don't drive it. They get
it.
educated so that way now they're aware. They look in their own community to identify.
Yeah, because it's really wrong if we think we know what
Right.
their gap is and we go tell them what their gap is and we're going to help you. We're going to fix it for you. That's just not going to work.
No. The people closest to the problem, they'll tell you where the problem is.
They identify the biggest gap, and then we work with them for 90 days to do, this sounds so business-like, but a business plan, basically, a proposal to
Sure.
us, and on how they would like to address it. We give them as much assistance as they want on their business plan, and then they put an application in for us to fully fund it, to address their biggest gap, and then they do it. We fund it, they do it. We don't do it.
So there's
we'll walk with them.
responsibility as well.
We'll help when they ask, but basically they come up with the idea, the big gap, and they figure out how they're going to do it themselves, with funding, of course. And so we have 20 of those organizations now doing that.
20?
Yeah.
Because I was about to ask you, how do you share those across communities? Never mind. There you go.
Yeah. So and each one's different.
Right.
Now there are some that work on the same gap, obviously, but they do it in different ways. They do it in the way that they think is going to work for their particular community. And so we started the first year where we funded, I think, 5 or 6, and now we're in our 3rd year, so we have 20 altogether working, and we're gonna fund them. And we promised a minimum of 3 years.
Okay.
That doesn't mean we're going to cut it off at 3 years. It just means that you can expect us to be there with this money for 3 years.
Right.
So let's do the most we can for 3 years.
Right.
We'll assess where you are, the progress you've made. Some of them we're probably going, I'm sure we're going to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Some, if they haven't made enough progress, may not keep going.
Right.
But we want to use our dollars to really improve communities. So that's a real innovative concept. I would say our community councils are innovative because when we were going through DEIB, we were trying to add diversity and inclusion into our board leadership. Well, you can't do that just by snapping your fingers. It takes a long time to really affect diversity because there only might be 2 people or 3 people rolling off every year.
Right.
So it just doesn't change overnight. It takes some time. But somebody had a great idea. And we were also talking about people with lived experiences or living experiences on the board.
Right.
We have a couple.
Diversity of thought.
Yeah, we have a couple, but we don't have enough. People that really have lived it. And so a board member came up with a great idea. And he said, well, why don't we develop little sub-board councils or something like that, and put some people on there with lived experiences, and they can report up to us and tell us what we're doing well, and what we're not doing so well, and what ideas they have to work on their gaps that we can consider. So we have 12 areas, strategic areas of opportunity that we've identified, and we're setting 3 community councils up per year. It takes a while. And so 50% of each community council are people with lived experiences, and 50% are people that can get things done in their communities. There's pathfinders, right?
I was going to say, I don't have the lived experiences. I got the get things done part. You got me. I understand.
So we got the pathfinders, things that people can get. Some are actually elected officials.
Okay.
So anyway, we put these community councils. So we have 4 of them up so far. And they report into the board. We have the South Texas Community Council coming into our board advance that we're doing. We don't call them board retreats anymore because we're advancing.
Got it.
So our board advance, and they're coming up to give a
I just thought it took me a second. There you go. You know, who came up with that retreat? I guess,
I don't know, because we really don't retreat. Yeah, we might do something fun. We might have a meal and stuff like that. But
I mean, that's a relaxed part. It's not really a retreat.
We're really working.
We're advancing, yeah.
But anyway, so the board advance. And anyway, so we have the community council from South Texas down the Rio Grande Valley coming up to give a report to us. And they gave a report to me first, because I, of course, want to see the report before they give it to the board.
Right.
And it's pretty compelling, and it's eye-opening, and it's going to make everyone that hears their report really understand how they live. So we have a handful of people that live in colonias.
Okay.
And they're going to talk about life in the colonia.
Wow.
And they're going to talk to us about what they need, and they're going to give us compliments on doing some things, and they're going to talk about some things that, man, if we could do this too, that would be great for them.
Wow.
It's going to be very eye-opening for all of us, board members and decision makers, my executive team at MHM.
Wow, that's fantastic. Let me ask you, I know you're going to have to run
So
here.
that's a couple of innovations.
Well, and I wanted to talk about one more innovation that's kicking off, and you Ministries has been a great benefactor of promoting for-profit organizations to look for innovative ways to address health equity through its partnership with Velocity Texas and the education that it's doing, and coming up with this community health accelerator, which is going to start. And for those that don't know, this is where pre-seed companies will be a part of an accelerator, and as part of that accelerator, they'll get to look at their gaps as an organization, and also look at ways that they can provide a pilot to the community that Ministry serves to go look at their gaps as well, which can be a great partnership essentially for that. What are your thoughts on how for-profit organizations can actually impact health equity, such as like the Community Health Accelerator?
Yeah, well, working most of my life for a for-profit organization, I think that they do things very, very well. So I think, why not look for a for-profit organization that is well-run, well-led, to look into an area of social determinants of health and come up with a way to come up with a product or a solution for a social determinant of health that isn't being driven by, say, a not-for-profit organization like mine. So it just opens the possibilities.
Right.
And then working with Velocity Texas can really help them move this idea forward faster. And we're going through the evaluation process right now of looking at companies and applications. But again, this is a very innovative thing. But why not? Why not get people that are cutting edge, forward thinkers, to think about a business that they can run and be successful at, that will also help the people that we're trying to help and help us help them, and connect it all the way around. So again, it's innovative. I tell people about this all the time, and most of the people I talk to about it are not-for-profit organizations. They go, wow, never thought about doing something like that. Right. So it's just one more innovative thing that we do, and I'm real excited. Like I said, we're on the just like we have a couple studies, and I'm very anxious to see how these studies come out. I'm very anxious to see what comes out of this evaluation process and what company or companies really step up and go forward in this process.
It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Jaime, I want to thank you so much for coming on here, and I want to leave you with this. So 10 years ago, about this time, there was a lawyer that was working at Methodist Healthcare System that when you needed help with this thing called baldridge, I raised my hand and said, I'll help.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it. And I'm sure when you got the word that some lawyer kid wanted to help with baldridge, you were like, what? But I wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to grow and to do that program and to do that with you and everything else that I got to do with Methodist. But literally a decade ago, that you were brave enough, and I thank you for that, to let a lawyer try his hand at baldridge. So thank you.
You're much more than a lawyer. I have full respect for lawyers, but you're more than a lawyer. You also have an MBA behind your name.
I do. You
also have a great business mind in addition to being a lawyer, and you are very innovative in your thinking, and you learn like a sponge. So like I said, at that time, none of us were experts at baldridge. So we were all going to be learning. Whoever drove it was going to be learning. And so you were, at first when you raised your hand, I was like going, I kind of had you pegged in that lawyer thing. But the more I thought about it, I said, yeah, if Matt really wants to do it, he'd be great. And you really did want to do it, and you were great. So thank you.
Thank you. It changed my life forever. Your leadership and its impact on me and my family changed our lives. So thank you for that. And thank you for coming here on this episode.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a thrill. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I have enjoyed working with Jaime and learning from him as just an amazing leader in our community. The two big things I hope you got to hear was every leader is responsible for culture. Every leader is responsible for creating a diverse and inclusive environment so that way you can meet your mission. Every leader is responsible for innovation. And you got to hear of all the nuggets that I've been blessed in the years that I've worked with Jaime and for Jaime, to be able to hear straight from him of all of the ways that he as a leader drives to accomplish those things. Thank you so much for your support of our podcast these last 50 episodes. We will be going strong here into our next 50. If you like what we're doing, please leave us a message. If you can, subscribe to whichever platform you're watching us on. But until next time, we'll see you later.